So after the traveller's outburst of indignation in the question that John read out a little while ago, Nichiren Daishonin then continues his argument, his case for the validity of his teachings. And he begins by citing passages from the Lotus Sutra of Shakyamuni Buddha and from the Nirvana Sutra. This is the answer, in fact, to this question. Later he goes on even deeper, but this afternoon we'll just take these particular paragraphs. So I'll ask John now to read the answer to question 3.
The host, anxious to clarify his words, replied, "To be sure, Buddha halls stand rooftop to rooftop, and sutra storehouses are ranged eave to eave. Priests are as numerous as bamboo plants and rushes, monks as common as rice and hemp seedlings. The temples and priests have been honored from centuries past, and every day new respect is paid them. But the monks and priests today are fawning and devious, and they confuse the people and lead them astray. The ruler and his ministers lack understanding and fail to distinguish between truth and heresy. The Ninno Sutra, for example, says, evil monks, hoping to gain fame and profit, in many cases appear before the ruler, the heir apparent, or the other princes, and take it upon themselves to preach doctrines that lead to the violation of the Buddhist law and the destruction of the nation. The rulers, failing to perceive the truth of the situation, listen to and put faith in such doctrines, and proceed to create regulations that are perverse in nature and do not accord with the rules of Buddhist discipline. In this way, they bring about the destruction of Buddhism and of the nation. The Nirvana Sutra states, Bodhisattvas, have no fear in your hearts because of such things as wild elephants, but evil friends, they are what you should fear. If you are killed by a wild elephant, you will not fall into any of the 3 evil paths. But if evil friends lead you to your death, you are certain to fall into one of them. The Lotus Sutra says, there will be monks in that evil age with perverse wisdom and hearts that are fawning and crooked, who will say they have attained what they have not attained, being proud and boastful in heart. Or they will be forest-dwelling monks, wearing clothing of patched rags and living in retirement, who will claim they are practicing the true way, despising and looking down on the rest of mankind. Greedy for profit and nourishment, they will preach the Dharma to laymen, and will be respected and revered by the world as though they were arhats who possess the 6 supernatural powers. Constantly, they will go about among the populace, seeking in this way to slander us. They will address the rulers, high ministers, Brahmins, and great patrons of Buddhism, as well as the other monks, slandering and speaking evil of us, saying, these are men of perverted views who preach the doctrines of heretical sects. In a muddied kalpa, in an evil age, there will be many different things to fear. Demons will take possession of others, and through them curse, revile, and heap shame on us. The evil monks of that muddied age, failing to understand the Buddha's expedient means, how he preaches the Dharma in accord with what is appropriate, will confront us with foul language and angry frowns. Again and again we will be banished. In the Nirvana Sutra, the Buddha says, after I have passed away and countless hundreds of years have gone by, all the sages of the 4 stages will also have passed away. After the former day of the law has ended and the middle day of the law has begun, there will be monks who will give the appearance of abiding by the rules of monastic discipline, but they will scarcely ever read or recite the sutras, and instead will crave all kinds of food and drink with which to nourish their bodies. Though they wear the robes of monks, they will go about searching for alms like so many huntsmen, spying sharply and stalking softly. They will be like cats on the prowl for mice. And constantly they will reiterate these words, I have attained the state of an arhat. Outwardly, they will seem to be wise and good, but within they will harbor greed and jealousy. And when they are asked to preach the Dharma, they will conceal it, pretending to be Brahmins who have taken a vow of silence. They are not true monks. They merely have the appearance of monks. Consumed by their erroneous views, they slander the true law. When we look at the world in the light of these passages of Scripture, we see that the situation is just as they describe it. If we do not admonish the evil monks, how can we hope to do good?
Thank you very much. The most important lines of that particular passage are the two last lines. If we do not admonish the evil monks, how can we hope to do good? This is what I want to study with you now. So, of course, Nichiren Daishonin is explaining the reasons throughout this passage why he must so strictly admonish these evil monks, as he calls them. And he starts quoting from the Lotus Sutra to prove what he has to say. Because these passages from the Lotus Sutra and the Nirvana Sutra all concern the age of Mappo, which is the age in which Nichiren Daishonin was born. But sometimes we find, I believe, his attacks on these monks and priests almost too severe. We're sensitive to this sort of thing. We've been brought up in an age of permissiveness. Was it really necessary, we say in our hearts, that Nichiren Daishonin should behave in that way? I don't like it. Everyone has a right to believe in what they believe. This is the way we think sometimes today. But of course, he is not slandering those monks as human beings. He is condemning what they were teaching and preaching, which was leading the people to misery. This is what he hoped to uproot. And in the process, of course, save those monks and priests from further slander and causing others, an increasing number in Japan, to slander as well. These people sincerely believed they were enlightened. They were what is called in Buddhism zojoman, people of conceited minds. They were judging the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha and selecting from them. Oh, we'll use this bit here and this bit there and that bit from that sutra and this bit from this sutra. This is what we believe with our great minds are the great teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha. People of conceited minds. And as a result, of course, they were distorting the whole of Shakyamuni's teachings. This was a terrible thing. This was what Nichiren Daishonin saw so clearly. And this was why Japan was heading for ruin. This was what he was trying to say to everybody. Quite recently, at the summer course at Tretz, Sensei warned us about this very point. He said, studying the gosho is not playing with theoretical ideology. It is the source of power with which to challenge daily life. And he elaborated on this further in his gosho lecture at Tretz. And I'm going to ask John to read the relevant passage to you.
Those who devote themselves to study without practice cannot obtain real benefit. No matter how much they may know about the gosho, they cannot draw great good fortune from the mystic law. The ultimate aim of Nichiren Daishonin's Buddhism lies in attaining Buddhahood, and for this, practice is indispensable. One who boasts of his knowledge of Buddhism and finds self-satisfaction in the study of abstract theory alone is no longer a Buddhist, much less a follower of Nichiren Daishonin. Many people of this sort neglect practice and make no effort to transmit the law into society or into the future. They assume a critical attitude toward those who embrace the Lotus Sutra, thereby creating bad karma.
Thank you. So exactly like those monks, President Iketo is warning us that we must not fall into this trap. The only reason one can fall into it is if you fail to practice as the Buddha taught. Because the Buddha taught 3 practices, not just study. And such people, because they do not do the 3 practices, fail to do their human revolution. And the 3 poisons and their egos takes charge of their lives. And as a result, what they teach is totally distorted. So, of course, we see the same type of people outside of Buddhism. In government, politicians, scientists, people in the media, people in all fields of society who may appear cultured, well-dressed, charming, but in reality, under the surface, their lives are filled with the 3 poisons. This is the age of the 3 poisons, Mappo. And of course, their actions in thought, word, and deed are based on those poisons. The last lines again say, if we do not admonish the evil monks, how can we hope to do good? He had to admonish them in order to save the people and to save them from committing further slander. If Nichiren Daishonin, in 1253, when he declared Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, just said, this is the true law, ladies and gentlemen, and left it at that, nothing would have happened to him whatsoever. He could have gone along, forming a little sect, people would have followed him, he would have received no persecutions, no trouble at all. The reason the persecutions fell on him like a series of terrible storms was because he not only said, this is the true law, but he also cited every one of the sects in Japan and said, and you are practicing the wrong teachings, and you are distorting the minds of the people, and this is why Japan's in such misery. This was why the persecutions descended on him. Nichiren Daishonin was not just concerned with himself. He was not just concerned with leading a sect. He was concerned for the happiness of everybody. And this is why he had to say these things. He had to admonish those evil monks. This is true Buddhist mercy, isn't it? True jihi. So it comes down in Buddhist terms to a question of what is the greatest good and what is the greatest evil. So the greatest good is to embrace the true law, the Gohonzon and Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. The greatest evil, far and away greater than any other evil, is to slander that law. The people of Japan in those days, in their ignorance, were slandering the true law and desperately suffering because they were misled by a host of priests and monks. The greatest good was to tell them this clearly and forthrightly. If Nichiren Daishonin had preached the law without condemning the false teachings, he would have been cancelling out the greatest good, wouldn't he, by the greatest evil. Turning the other eye, in other words, to the evil that was going on around him. In the Gosho, Admonitions Against Slander, Nichiren Daishonin deals with this point in some detail. And he quotes from the Nirvana Sutra in the process. And I'll just ask John to read this to you. It's such an important point.
In the Nirvana Sutra, Shakyamuni stated, "If even a good priest sees someone slandering the law and disregards him, failing to reproach him, to oust him, or to punish him for his offense, then that priest is betraying Buddhism. But if he takes the slanderer severely to task, drives him off, or punishes him, then he is my disciple and one who truly understands my teachings. Never forget this admonition against ignoring another's slander of Buddhism. Both master and disciple will surely fall into the hell of incessant suffering if they see enemies of the Lotus Sutra and fail to reproach them. The great teacher Nanhui wrote, 'They will fall into hell with evil men.' To seek enlightenment without repudiating slander is as futile as trying to find water in the midst of fire or fire in the midst of water."
In other words, you are merely cancelling out the greatest good by the greatest evil. So we really need to remember this point today, I believe. Of course, we don't live in a Buddhist country. We don't have the task of trying to lever people out of centuries of tradition in sects following the wrong teachings in order to open their eyes and let them see the truth. Nevertheless, should we ever encounter people who are practicing the earlier teachings of Shakyamuni, we have to be extremely firm and forthright in what we say. And if we can't argue and debate it in detail with documentary proof, then we should refer it to someone who can. But in the gosho, all the details are there in order to debate successfully with any such person. Shakyamuni, when he taught the Lotus Sutra, said, discard, didn't he, all that I've taught before. He also said the only teaching in the age of Mappo is the Lotus Sutra. So, of course, the other religions in Europe arose quite ignorant of Buddhism, or, as far as we know, pretty ignorant of it, though there were Buddhist emissaries going as far as Greece, even in the time of King Ashoka. Nevertheless, due to the ignorance of those teachings and the lack of depth, it does lead those of us who have followed them to slander life. Of this there can be no shadow of doubt, and we only have to look at the history of Europe to see this so clearly before us. So these sort of things we must be firm about when we're teaching the law to others. When we're trying to do shakubuku, we must patiently point out this, but albeit not only patiently, but extremely firmly. I've heard it said and read it that people have said that it is a sign of weakness in religion when they begin to recognize other faiths and they start saying that there are many paths to enlightenment, that there is more than one way. I think this is a very profound observation. This means that a religion is losing its confidence, that its teachings are not able to withstand the onslaughts of contemporary times. This is all, isn't it, based on the principle of you do your thing and I'll do mine. Like the traveller, we shouldn't be misled by the trappings of religion, should we? We have to look below the surface to really understand and to really realize just how great Buddhism is. I really feel that in these very weak and vacillating times, we've got to think about this point very, very carefully. And we should courageously follow the words and the spirit of Nichiren Daishonin, who, knowing that all the three strong enemies at once would attack him, never spared himself in declaring that what the people were doing and what the priests were teaching was totally wrong and could never lead them down the true path to enlightenment. His conviction was tremendous. And I just want to ask John to read two other short gosho passages in this respect.
This is from On Practicing the Buddha's Teachings. Suppose someone, no matter who, should loudly proclaim that the Lotus Sutra alone can lead people to Buddhahood, and that all other sutras, far from enabling them to attain enlightenment, only drive them into hell. Observe what happens should he thus try to refute the teachers and doctrines of all the other sects. The three powerful enemies will arise without fail. And this is from the opening of the eyes. Here I will make a great vow. Though I might be offered the rulership of Japan, if I will only abandon the Lotus Sutra, accept the teachings of the Muryo-jo Sutra, and look forward to rebirth in the Western Pure Land, though I might be told that my father and mother will have their throats cut off if I do not recite the Nembutsu, whatever persecutions I might encounter, so long as men of wisdom do not prove my teachings to be false, then I will never accept the practices of the other sects. All other troubles are no more to me than dust before the wind. I will be the pillar of Japan. I will be the eyes of Japan. I will be the great ship of Japan. This is my vow, and I will never forsake it.
Now, these are amazing words, but they're certainly, I believe, what I feel. And never would I give up the Gohonzon unless some person proved the teachings to be wrong. When Nichiren Daishonin says proved, he means proved in the sense of the three proofs: documentary and literary proof, and theoretical proof, and actual proof in this daily life. So here we live in a non-Buddhist country, as I say, and we practice, strictly speaking, shoju and not shakabuku. That is to say, teaching through persuasion and discussion. If somebody is dedicated to another religion, we should leave them if we feel, and they insist, that they are happy as a result of practicing it. But this doesn't mean to say that we should in any way suggest or agree that there is another ultimate truth other than the Gohonzon. So we have to be strong where people are really desperately suffering. This, I believe, is in the pure interests of true mercy, isn't it? So through the wisdom of the Gohonzon, through our daimoku, we should know how to deal with every different case of shakabuku. As long as we are insistent, both to ourselves and others, that there is nothing else for this age except the Gohonzon and Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. If we waver on this point, we'll never shakabuku satisfactorily, and we shall show the weakness which is being shown by some of the other religions at this very moment. So when we are questioned on this point, which of course we are, I have been, probably you have been, if people say to me, do you really believe this is the only way? I always say, yes. I know of no other. And I know every day of the power of this Gohonzon and believe that nothing on this earth surpasses it. In his general guidance before the Gosho lecture at Tretz, Sensei said, never mind whether or not they listen to us. We should teach the true law. It doesn't matter if by saying something like that, the person turns on their heel and walks away. Because later, when that person still sees the Gohonzon working in one's life, and the experiences one has and examples of its power, they'll change their minds also. But never should we be scared of being definite and strong in that way. On the contrary, I believe, if we're weak in that respect, then what we give is an impression of the weakness of our own faith. Please remember, it's no good cancelling out the greatest good by the greatest evil. We have to be strong, firm, polite, courteous, and most important of all, merciful. And above all, we have to prove, without even saying a word, the power of the Gohonzon working in our own lives. It's not necessarily a matter of conspicuous benefits. Last night we had a great discussion with the Young Men's Division. This was a point we all came to the conclusion about. Too often at discussion meetings we feel we've got to give an experience concerning a conspicuous benefit. Nonsense. As a matter of fact, most of the guests get a bit turned off by conspicuous benefit. They feel this is a materialistic practice. What the guests most impressed by is the experience of human revolution. Even the experience of struggle and failing and determining to struggle again. That is what people in this world want to hear today. And that is the sort of power that they want to see expressed in people's lives. So let's from now on make great discussion meetings. Let's not hesitate really to tell our own experiences of human revolution, whether they show us up in a good light or not. If we're still practicing, always they'll be impressive. Don't let's worry anymore about these conspicuous benefits, nice as they may be. Of course it's sometimes great to hear about them, but that is not the crux of the matter. The crux of the matter is the human revolution, and the fact that there is no other religion in this world with the power to enable people to change their unhappy karma, and from sadness and darkness and ignorance to begin to show some form of brilliance in their life. This I firmly believe. I believe you all firmly believe it in your hearts. So instead of just believing it in our hearts, let's express it with our whole lives. Thank you very much indeed for listening. Thank you very much.